Mm. Good day, everyone. Good day to our instructor. I hope you're having a good day despite our busy schedule. Well, by the way, I am John Lee Bali, and together with me is Earl Francis Catoriano, and we will be discussing soul making in art. So, without further ado, I will give the floor to Earl Francis to further discuss the topic. Earl?
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, John Lee. I'm Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, John Lee. So today we are going to discuss what soul making is about. First of all, have you ever looked at a piece of artwork and thought to yourself that, wow, the artist really has put everything just to make this artwork? And that will lead us to our topic today. So as Dr. Norman Narciso, one of the leading Filipino thought leaders in the art world, deeply explains soul making. Soul making is an alternate place to know oneself and to look at the depths and meaning of what we do in our daily lives. So, soul making is a step towards a deeper comprehension of how the world is perceived and how his or her own personality is seen. Next slide, please. Okay, soul making plays a major role in art production. First, it is a form of crafting stories, transforming brief moments into images, symbols that connect with people, understanding culture, and embodying tolerance, peace, and imagination. So, knowing oneself. In soul making, who are you is the topic that throughout the process serves as a guidepost. Knowing oneself begins with consciousness. In order to start the process, it is necessary to realize and embrace one's truth, history, and understanding of existence. With this newfound insight, art, which is usually the very core of soul making, can now come into play. Therefore, it is not so much the production that is mostly taken into account, but the method of perceiving anything. Next slide. Okay, moving on to the depths and essence. Soul making is more than the soul's religious perspective. Soul refers to a person's individuality that resonates with his or her behavior. Since art is a human expression that is highly valued and symbolic, a person typically uses different art forms to fulfill the need to communicate and express him or herself. The human desire to actualize his or her very being is strongly assisted by soul making. What we are doing. Art gives a person a sense of purpose about what he or she is doing. As any artwork is an expression of one's perceptions, feeling, cultural growth is the process of creating such expression. Soul making utilizes every human experience to build the influence that can make the artist himself and others improve. Everyday life. Soul making is a method that can be gone through by anyone. With that statement, life includes a lot of adventure. Understanding the challenges that come with each adventure and understanding how each person has a unique way of perceiving things as life happens to them. As all are creative in their own right, it is not limited it is not limited to the obviously artistic. It's just a matter of losing yourself in the art of viewing the world from a different perspective and detaching yourself from yourself. So let's move on to the 5 categories of soul making. First, crafting images. Crafting images include the production by various forms and methods of visual representations of images. Second, crafting stories. He or she is already creating stories when an individual writes down his or her personal feedback, life, values, deep feelings, ideas, ideals, and even high and low emotions. One example for that is our authors and story makers and um, TV producers. They create stories using their personal experiences. So crafting instruments. Crafting instruments are treated as a bridge to the unknown because the instrument creates sounds that exceeds our thoughts, emotions, and sensations. Crafting movements. Life is movement, according to Dr. Narciso, and one's life is full of different rhythms. This example can be actualized by dancers because When dancers create choreographies, they are also relating it to their different experiences in lives. So the last one would be crafting techniques. Crafting techniques in soul making are the artist's reflection of his life and experiences in any piece of art. So these categories basically are just soul making is like translating your life through your art, and by that your art will have identity and life. And that's about it for my part. Take it away, John Lee.
So thank you for that, Earl, for a very comprehensive discussion of what is soul making is and what are the categories of soul making. Now let's move on to our next topic. If there is categories of soul making, then there is phases of soul making. So I am going to discuss the five phases of soul making. Firstly, we have here seeking. The first step is seeking or finding. At this point, we recognize that each of us are interested in our growth and the ways of our world is a seeker. When we say seeker or finding, what we need to do is to find, I mean, in this phase, we need to become a finder of comfort, a seeker of love, and just like what is stated here, we need to find the interest of our own growth. So this is the first phase of soul making. We need to find comfort within ourselves. We need to find confidence within ourselves, or we need to understand what's within us so that we can be able to become soul makers ourselves. Second, we have here settling. Soul making is about communicating as profoundly as possible with the soul, with other human and human beings, and with the world. So after seeking comfort within yourselves, you need to settle in. So in order to settle, you need to practice communicating. You need to practice communication. And just like what stated here, communicating as profoundly as possible, as wide as possible, as broader as possible with other people or with other non-human beings such as flowers, things, or if you are if you are an animal lover, then you can talk to your dog, cats, or anything. And with the world, but most importantly, within your soul. You need to communicate within your soul because if you are able to find that comfort within yourselves, then you are able to know deeper what or who you really are. So that's settling. Now, if we have seeking, if we have seeking, settling, then let's move on to our third phase, which is to surrender. If it is permitted to surrender with all its pain and vulnerability, something magical will happen. We tend to note in the midst of the crashing that our activities begin to be in the service of the soul. If naka-remember mo sa point sa inyong life na grabe gid ang challenges, grabe gid ang problems, grabe gid ang burden, and you find yourself nga, hala, those challenges, those problems really helped me to be more stronger, to be more capable, and to know my coping mechanism. Ingana ang to surrender. You need to surrender something in order to gain something. Na siya win-win situation, no? Ani nga phase. And onto our fourth is soul making. At some point in the variations between the settling and surrender, dual polarities, we begin to perceive our practice and life in the universe as soul makers. We are beginning to become an expert and endured healer. So excuse me, in settling and surrendering Tao, in that at some point in that we find ourselves becoming stronger, becoming capable, and becoming confident within ourselves. Because kinsa man pwede dili no ma-confident no if we realize our own strength and we realize our we are able to to point out our weaknesses and establish a way or an avenue where we can turn these weaknesses into our strength. So in settling and to surrendering, we can establish that, we can progress with that. So let's move on to our fifth phase, which is to soar, which is soaring. When we begin the journey, that what we most wish is to soar, to conquer our worldly experiences, material realities, to travel. So what we mean by soaring is that if you're able to know yourself, if you are able to seek comfort within yourself, if you're able to settle with yourself by communicating, and if you're able to practice surrendering things in order to gain something, and you're able to finally become soul maker, then you need to soar high. You need to widen your imagination, and you need to widen your space so that you can be able to grow more and become the person you want to be in the future. Moving on, we have now soul making, making and deriving meaning from art, which is our main topic today. So in order for human to make sense of language and deriving meanings from words, semantic and grammatical, rules are important elements to be considered. So in order for us humans to be able to make something out of an art, we need to familiarize the rules and important elements. So in order for people to make sense of the work, it requires understanding the visual elements which art was grounded, especially the principle of design. Important to note the audience and the said artwork must have a certain level of awareness of the style, artwork, form, and content of the said work. Just like what I have said earlier, in order to gain something or to make something out of an artwork, we need to like visualize things. We need to have certain level of, the we need to be aware of the certain level of awareness sa style, sa artwork, sa form, sa content, sa mga artists, no, sa ilahang mga work. And form is the total of the artwork, which includes the textures, colors, and shapes utilized by the artwork. So kailangan ta mag-nitpick, no, in order for us to make something out of an art, to derive something out of an art, we need to be nitpickers. We need to touch the textures. We need to see the colors and the shapes and what are the things utilized by the artist. The content of an artwork includes not only form but also its subject matter and its underlying meanings or themes. This is where soul making will enter. If we are able to reflect on something, like something like an art, if you're able to gain something from that, and we are able to put ourselves in that painting, then that's where soul making enters. Now, improvisation, doing something without prior preparation. There is a decision to act upon something that may not necessarily be planned. Some would say that it is a reaction against the stiffness in the art during the 20th century, because it blurs the line between reality and the origin of that imagination, infusing spontaneity and improvisation add up to the totality of the work of art, and it allows artists to explore and think about how the audience can actually be part of the artwork in itself. I don't know if you've gotten into a scenario where you are asked to draw something, and the preparation is not just, like it's just a short period of time given to you to do that art pieces, but it turns out that it is more reflective, it is more engaging to the people who are seeing your artwork. That is improvisation. Now let's move on to our last topic for tonight. So appropriation, the practice of using pre-existing objects and images in an artwork without really altering the originals. This notion paved the way for the emergence of appropriation artists who seem to promote the idea that authorship relies on the viewer. Traditionally, forgery can be classified into two forms: outright copies of existing works and pastiches, which are works that bring together elements from a work and infuse them to new work. The intentions of the appropriation artists are often questioned, since issues of plagiarism or forgery sometimes arise, because some would argue that the reason behind this is that they want the audience to recognize the images they copied. Um I don't know if you have already gotten into art appropriation, where you're able to gain inspiration and remake something. This is appropriation is. And there are appropriation artists nga gabuhat ani, nga gabuhat like gakuha sila inspiration from one artwork and make it into a new artwork and form, para para mas engaging, mas kuan siya, and mas ano siya kanang dali ra siya makuan sa tao, like kanang dali ra siya masabtan, dali ra siya maka-reflect ang tao, and that is what art is all about, being able to make something out of an art. And if you are a viewer, then you love art, and to the extent that you appreciate everything, like you are reflective as a person, you're appreciative as a person, then you can be an appropriation artist. So that is soul making all about. So to end this discussion, I just want to summarize everything. No, soul making in art is all about being able to make an art, drawing inspiration to your experiences or to who you really are, because that is one of our privileges. No, if we are a viewer of an art, we can like rightfully can make something out of that. So that is what soul making is. So I guess that ends our discussion for tonight. I hope you've learned something about soul making in art. Again, this is John Lee Bali, and together with me is Earl Francis Kitoriano saying, Daghang salamat ug dalaygon ng Diyos.